The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's emergency room hummed with the kind of persistent buzz that crawls under your skin and stays there. Maya Chen pressed her back against the cold examination table, wincing as the paper crinkled beneath her weight. Each breath felt like shards of glass scraping against her ribs, but she forced herself to remain still. The waiting was always the worst part. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. "Your sister's in the family room," Dr. Patricia Reeves said, her voice carrying the practiced calm of someone who delivered both good news and devastating diagnoses countless times. She was a woman in her 50s, with silver streaks threading through her dark hair and the kind of steady presence that made you believe everything would be okay, even when it wouldn't be. "She's quite upset about the accident." Maya's laugh came out as more of a wheeze. Accident. The word tasted bitter on her tongue, like copper pennies in disappointment. Through the thin walls, she could hear Lily's voice rising and falling in the distinctive cadence of practiced distress, the same tone she'd used when she broke Mom's favorite vase at age 12, when she crashed Dad's car at 16, when she'd maxed out Maya's credit card last year. Always the victim, even when she was the cause. The X-ray machine's mechanical whir had stopped 20 minutes ago, but Maya could still feel the cold metal against her chest, the way the technician's eyes had lingered on the screen just a moment too long. Something about that pause, that barely perceptible hesitation, had sent ice water through her veins despite the warm September evening outside. Dr. Reeves held a manila folder in her hands, thick with what looked like multiple films. Too many films for a simple rib fracture. Maya had broken her wrist when she was 10, fell off her bike trying to keep up with Lily, ironically enough, and she remembered there being maybe 2 images, 3 at most. This folder looked substantial, heavy with implications she wasn't ready to consider. "Maya," Dr. Reeves began, settling into the rolling chair with deliberate care, "I need to ask you some questions before we discuss the X-rays. When your sister pushed you, how exactly did you fall?" The memory played in Maya's mind like a scratched record, skipping and stuttering over the same painful moments. They'd been in the kitchen of their childhood home, the one their parents had left to both of them when they died in that car accident 3 years ago. Maya had been making dinner, nothing fancy, just spaghetti and marinara from a jar, when Lily had stormed in, fresh from another failed job interview, and looking for someone to blame. "She came up behind me," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was stirring the sauce, and she put both hands on my back and shoved. Hard. I went forward into the counter, caught my ribs right on the edge."
Dr. Reeves made a note, her expression carefully neutral. "Maya, I'm going to be direct with you because I believe honesty serves patients better than false comfort. The X-rays show 3 fractured ribs, as we suspected, but they also show something else, evidence of previous injuries that concern me greatly." The room seemed to tilt sideways. Maya gripped the edge of the examination table so hard her knuckles went white. "Previous injuries?" "Old fractures, some quite old. Your left wrist shows signs of having been broken and healed incorrectly. That would be consistent with your childhood bike accident. But there are also hairline fractures in your collarbone that appear to be maybe 2 years old, and what looks like a healed compression fracture in one of your vertebrae that I'd estimate happened sometime in the past 18 months. Maya's mind raced backward through time, through a catalog of accidents and mishaps that suddenly took on a different, darker meaning. The time Lily had playfully tackled her in the backyard after their parents' funeral, sending her sprawling into the garden border. The way she'd accidentally slammed into Maya during last Christmas's family gathering, claiming she'd had too much wine. The morning 6 months ago when Lily had grabbed Maya's shoulders to get her attention during an argument about bills, her fingers digging in so hard they left bruises that Maya had explained away as clumsiness. "I don't understand," Maya said, though part of her was beginning to, and that understanding felt like drowning in reverse, like being pulled up from deep water into air that was too thin to breathe. Dr. Reeves leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Maya, In my 15 years practicing emergency medicine, I've learned to recognize patterns. What I'm seeing in these x-rays combined with the circumstances of tonight's injury suggests a history of physical abuse. And given that your sister is the one who brought you in, claiming this was an accident, the words hung in the air like smoke, heavy and acrid. Physical abuse? The clinical term felt alien when applied to her own life, to the complicated relationship she'd always simply called difficult with her sister. Lily was dramatic, sure, impulsive, sometimes mean when she was angry or drunk, but abuse? That was something that happened to other people, wasn't it? People who didn't have college degrees and stable jobs and nice houses and good neighborhoods. Through the thin wall separating them from the family room, Maya could hear Lily's voice again, now talking on her phone, probably to one of her friends, spinning the story into something that would garner sympathy and absolve her of responsibility. I can't believe how clumsy she is. Always has been, ever since we were kids. Remember when she fell off her bike? And now this, just walked right into the counter like she couldn't see it. I keep telling her she needs glasses, but does she listen to me? Maya closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, maybe the first time in her entire adult life, she let herself see the truth clearly. Not the version where she was the awkward older sister who couldn't quite keep up with vibrant and charismatic Lily. Not the story where she was lucky to have someone in her life who kept her grounded and humble. The real truth, sharp-edged and painful as broken glass. "There's something else," Dr. Reeves said quietly. "I need to ask, do you feel safe going home tonight with your sister?" The question should have been easy. Of course she was safe. This was Lily, her baby sister, the person she'd protected and provided for and loved unconditionally for 28 years. The same Lily who used to crawl into her bed during thunderstorms, who'd cried on Maya's shoulder through 3 messy breakups, the one who made her laugh until her sides hurt when she wasn't making them hurt for entirely different reasons. But safety. When was the last time Maya had felt truly safe around Lily? When was the last time she'd relaxed completely in her presence without that low-level tension humming in the background, the constant awareness of Lily's moods and the need to manage them carefully? "I don't know," Maya whispered, and the admission felt like stepping off a cliff. "I honestly don't know." Dr. Reeves nodded, as if this was exactly the answer she had been expecting. "Maya, I'm going to have our social worker come speak with you. Her name is Jennifer Torres, and she's very
Good at helping people figure out next steps. There's no pressure, no timeline. We just want to make sure you have all the information and resources available to you. I called Mom's sister in Portland. She thinks you're having some kind of breakdown. People are going to think something's wrong if you don't come home, like I hurt you or something. You know that's not what happened. Maya, please, you're scaring me. That last one had come through just minutes ago, and something about it made Maya's chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with her fractured ribs. You're scaring me. As if Maya's absence was the problem. As if her decision to sit in her car and think instead of immediately rushing home to comfort and reassure Lily was somehow an act of aggression. Maya had been 23 when their parents died, Lily barely 21. Maya had been the one to identify the bodies, to make funeral arrangements, to deal with lawyers and insurance companies, and the hundreds of small, devastating details that follow sudden loss. She'd been the one to hold Lily through the nightmares, to make sure she ate something besides cereal and granola bars, to convince her to go back to college and finish her degree. And somewhere in that process, Maya had become not just the older sister, but the parent, the protector, the person responsible for managing Lily's emotions and cushioning her from anything unpleasant or difficult. It had felt natural at first, even necessary. Lily had always been the baby, the one everyone wanted to take care of. She was beautiful in the way that made strangers stop and stare, with their mother's delicate bone structure and their father's thick dark hair. She was charming and funny and just vulnerable enough to bring out the protective instincts in everyone around her. Maya, by contrast, had always been the steady one,
Reliable Maya, who got good grades and remembered birthdays and could be counted on to make sensible decisions. Not beautiful like Lily, but pretty enough. Not charismatic like Lily, but well-liked. She was the supporting character in her own family story, and she'd accepted that role so completely that she'd forgotten it was a choice she'd made rather than a fundamental truth about who she was. But sitting in her car at nearly 3 a.m., her body aching and her mind finally clear for the first time in months, Maya found herself remembering who she'd been before she became Lily's caretaker. She'd wanted to be a teacher once, had even started a master's program in education before their parents died. She dreamed of having her own classroom, of being the kind of teacher who made Shakespeare accessible to reluctant teenagers and helped shy kids find their voices. Instead, she worked in accounting for a medical supply company, a job that paid well enough to cover the mortgage and Lily's various expenses, but left her feeling hollow and restless. She was good at it, good with numbers, good at organizing, good at solving other people's problems, but it wasn't what made her come alive. Teaching had made her come alive, back when she'd been brave enough to believe she deserved a life that excited her. When had she stopped believing that? When had she decided that wanting things for herself was selfish, that her role was to be the steady foundation that allowed Lily to shine? Maya's phone rang, jolting her from her thoughts. Lily's name and photo appeared on the screen, a picture Maya had taken last Christmas. Lily laughing at something their cousin had said, looking radiant and carefree, and exactly like the sister Maya had spent her whole life trying to protect. She let it go to voicemail, then immediately played the message. Maya, what the hell? I've been calling you for hours. The neighbors are going to start asking questions if you don't come home soon, and you know how Mrs. Patterson is with her gossip. Just look, I'm sorry, okay? I shouldn't have pushed you. I was angry about the job thing, and I took it out on you, and that wasn't fair. But you're acting like I'm some kind of monster, and that's not who I am. You know that's not who I am. I love you. You're my sister. Just come home so we can talk about this. The message ended, but Maya could hear something in Lily's voice that sent familiar alarm bells ringing in her head. Lily was scared, yes, but there was something else underneath, something calculating. It was the same tone she used when she was 16 and had crashed their dad's car, and she'd called Maya instead of their parents because she knew Maya would help her figure out a story that wouldn't get her in too much trouble.
Maya had helped then, just like she'd helped countless times since. She'd driven to the scene of the accident, had helped Lily move the car to a less suspicious location, had coached her through the story about how the accident happened in the grocery store parking lot instead of outside the party where Lily had been drinking. They'd never told their parents the truth, and Maya had felt like an accomplice rather than a protector. How many times had she done that? How many times had she helped Lily avoid consequences, smooth over conflicts, maintain the fiction that she was just a free spirit who needed understanding rather than someone who consistently chose her own comfort over everyone else's well-being? The list was longer than Maya wanted to acknowledge. The credit card incident, when Lily had somehow gotten a hold of Maya's card number and had run up nearly $3,000 in charges for clothes and meals and weekend trips with friends. Maya had paid it off quietly, had even convinced herself that Lily had meant to ask permission and just forgotten. The time Lily had borrowed Maya's car and returned it with a dented bumper and an empty gas tank, claiming she'd been rear-ended in a parking lot, but refusing to file an insurance claim because she didn't want to deal with the hassle. The pattern was so clear now that Maya wondered how she'd ever missed it. Lily would do something hurtful or irresponsible. Maya would feel angry and hurt. Lily would apologize with just enough vulnerability and remorse to make Maya feel guilty for staying angry. And then everything would return to normal until the next incident. But tonight felt different. The physical evidence in those x-rays had changed something fundamental, had made it impossible for Maya to explain away what had happened as a momentary lapse in judgment or a misunderstanding.
3 fractured ribs didn't happen by accident when someone playfully pushed their sister. The old injuries Dr. Reeves had found didn't lie or exaggerate or manipulate the truth to avoid responsibility. Maya's body had been keeping score, even when her mind had been making excuses. She thought about Jennifer Torres, the social worker who'd spent an hour with her at the hospital, patiently explaining things Maya had never considered. Domestic violence between siblings was more common than most people realized, Jennifer had said. The dynamics of abuse didn't change just because the perpetrator shared some DNA in your childhood memories. Love and abuse could coexist in the same relationship, in the same person, in the same moment. That was what made it so confusing, so difficult to name and address. The people who hurt us aren't monsters, Jennifer had explained. They're complicated human beings who are often dealing with their own trauma and pain. That doesn't excuse their behavior, but it does make it harder for victims to see the situation clearly, especially when there's a history of love and care mixed in with the harm. Maya had nodded, understanding intellectually what Jennifer meant, but struggling to apply it to her own life. Lily wasn't some stranger, some obviously dangerous person Maya should have avoided. She was the little girl who used to insist on sleeping in my room during thunderstorms, who'd brought me soup when she had the flu, who still called her Maybird sometimes, using the nickname their father had given her when she was small. But she was also the person who'd put Maya in the hospital tonight, the person who'd been putting Maya in the hospital, in smaller ways, for years. Maya's phone buzzed with another text. "I'm starting to think you're enjoying making me worry. This is cruel, Maya. This isn't like you." And there it was, the subtle shift from apology to accusation, from taking responsibility to making Maya's reaction the problem. It was so familiar that Maya felt herself starting to slip back into the old patterns, the old guilt. Maybe she was being cruel. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe she should just go inside and have the conversation Lily wanted, smooth everything over like she always did. But as she started to get out of the car, a sharp pain shot through her ribs, reminding her exactly why she was sitting in her driveway at 3 a.m. instead of sleeping safely in her own bed. The pain was real. The X-rays were real. The growing list of accidents and misunderstandings was real.
Maya settled back into the driver's seat and did something she hadn't done in years. She turned off her phone. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Maya was going to sit with her own thoughts and feelings without worrying about managing someone else's emotional response. She was going to let Lily be worried, be scared, be angry, be whatever she needed to be without rushing in to fix it. It felt terrifying and liberating all at once, like jumping off a high dive into water you couldn't see the bottom of. Maya closed her eyes and listened to the quiet sounds of her neighborhood at night, the distant hum of air conditioners, the rustle of leaves in the maple trees that lined the street, the soft footsteps of someone walking their dog. Normal sounds, peaceful sounds, the sounds of a world that would keep turning even if she wasn't constantly managing and fixing and sacrificing herself to keep other people comfortable. For the first time in years, Maya fell asleep without worrying about anyone else's needs but her own. Maya woke to the sound of pounding on her car window. The morning sun was already bright, and her neck ached from sleeping curled against the car door. Through the glass, she could see Lily's face, red and puffy from crying, her hair tangled and her makeup smeared. "Maya! Maya, wake up!" Lily's voice was muffled but urgent. "People are staring. Mrs. Patterson is watching from her window. This is humiliating." Maya sat up slowly, wincing as her ribs protested. She could see Mrs. Patterson, their elderly neighbor, indeed peering through her curtains with undisguised curiosity. A jogger had slowed his pace to stare at the scene unfolding on the normally quiet street. Lily was causing exactly the kind of public spectacle she claimed to be trying to avoid. "Open the door," Lily demanded, tugging on the handle. "We need to talk about this inside, like adults." But Maya found herself remembering something Jennifer Torres had told her the night before. Abusers often escalate their behavior when their victims start to pull away or seek help. They'll use shame, public embarrassment, threats to your reputation or relationships, anything to regain control. Maya started the car. Maya, don't you dare drive away from me. Lily's voice rose to a near shriek. I'm your sister. You can't just ignore me because you're having some kind of breakdown. Maya rolled down the window just enough to speak. I'm going to work, she said quietly. We'll talk later. Work? Maya, you were in the hospital last night. You need to rest. I need to go to work. Maya put the car in reverse. In her rearview mirror, she could see Lily standing in the driveway, her mouth open in shock. It might have been the first time in their adult lives that Maya had simply refused to engage with one of Lily's emotional emergencies. The drive to Riverside Medical Supply took 20 minutes through morning traffic. 20 minutes of Maya's phone buzzing constantly with calls and texts she didn't answer. By the time she pulled into the parking lot, she had 17 missed calls and God knows how many text messages. She deleted them all without reading them. Maya had been working at Riverside for 4 years, ever since she'd given up her teaching dreams to take a job that paid enough to support both her and Lily. It was housed in a low gray building that looked like every other office building constructed in the 1970s. Functional but uninspiring, with narrow windows and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. Her cubicle was in the northeast corner, next to a window that looked out over the employee parking lot. She tried to make it cheerful, with a small plant and a few photographs, but it still felt like exactly what it was. A place where dreams went to die quietly, buried under spreadsheets and invoice processing, and the steady, soul-crushing routine of work that paid the bills but fed nothing else.
Maya? Jesus, what happened to you? The voice belonged to David Kim, her closest friend at work and the person she ate lunch with most days. David was 35, divorced, and had the kind of dark sense of humor that came from working in corporate America for too long. He also had an uncanny ability to see through people's careful facades, which made him both an excellent friend and occasionally uncomfortable company. Car accident, Maya said automatically, settling into her desk chair with careful movements. It wasn't technically a lie, she told herself. There had been an accident, and it had involved her body colliding with something hard and unforgiving. Bullshit! David leaned against her cubicle wall, his arms crossed. I've seen car accident injuries. That's not what this is. Maya's computer screen flickered to life, displaying her usual Monday morning workload. Accounts receivable reports, inventory reconciliations, vendor payments that needed processing. The familiar routine should have been comforting, but instead it felt surreal, like playing a role in a movie about someone else's life. David, I really can't. Is it Lily? The question hit Maya like a physical blow. She looked up at David, saw the concern in his eyes, and realized that her secret hadn't been as well kept as she had thought. What do you mean? David glanced around the office, then pulled up a chair and sat down next to her desk. Maya, I've been watching you for months. You come in here with bruises you can't explain, you jump every time your phone rings, and you've got this look in your eyes like you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Last month, you flinched when I touched your shoulder to get your attention. People don't flinch like that unless someone's been hurting them. Maya felt tears burning behind her eyes. She'd been so careful, so good at explaining away the marks and the anxiety, at maintaining the fiction that her life was normal and manageable. But David saw her 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. Of course he'd noticed. It's complicated, she whispered. It always is. My ex-wife used to hit me, did you know that? Started small. A slap when she was angry, a push when she'd been drinking. I kept telling myself it wasn't that bad, that she was just passionate, that I probably deserved it somehow. Took me 3 years to admit what was actually happening. Maya stared at him. David had never mentioned this before, had never given any indication that he understood domestic violence from the inside. I didn't know. Most people don't. It's not exactly something you put on your resume. He leaned forward. Maya, whoever's hurting you, I don't care if it's your sister or your boyfriend or the Pope himself, you don't deserve it, and you don't have to protect them by staying quiet about it. Before Maya could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed Lily's name, and Maya felt her chest tighten automatically. She let it go to voicemail, but David had seen her reaction. "That's her, isn't it? Your sister?" Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "Answer it," David said quietly, "but put it on speaker. I want to hear how she talks to you." "David, I can't." "Maya, please. Sometimes we can't see our own situations clearly. Let me be your ears." Against her better judgment, Maya answered the phone. "Hello?" "Oh, thank God." Lily's voice was thick with tears. "Maya, I've been so worried. I called your office, but they said you weren't taking calls. Are you okay? Are you in pain?"
It sounded so caring, so concerned. Maya could see David's eyebrows rise, could almost hear him thinking that maybe he'd been wrong about the situation. "I'm fine, Lily. I just needed some space to think." "Space?" Lily's tone shifted subtly, becoming sharper. "Maya, you slept in your car. That's not normal behavior. That's not thinking space. That's having a breakdown. People are talking. Mrs. Patterson called me this morning asking if you were okay. Do you know how embarrassing it was to have to explain that my sister was apparently having some kind of episode in the driveway?" David's expression changed as he heard the shift in Lily's voice, the way she'd made Maya's reasonable need for space into evidence of mental instability. "I wasn't having an episode," Maya said quietly. "I was just—" "Maya, listen to yourself. You're acting paranoid and irrational. I'm worried about you. Maybe you hit your head harder than we thought when you fell. Maybe you should see a neurologist. Make sure there's no brain injury or something." Maya felt the familiar pull of Lily's logic, the way she could take Maya's legitimate concerns and twist them into evidence that Maya was the problem. But with David listening, with the memory of Dr. Reeves' X-ray findings fresh in her mind, Maya could hear what Lily was actually doing. "I didn't fall, Lily. You pushed me." Silence stretched across the phone line. When Lily spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled. "Maya, that's not what happened. You know that's not what happened. You were being dramatic about the job thing, waving your arms around, and you lost your balance. I tried to catch you, but I wasn't fast enough." "That's not true." "Maya, are you calling me a liar?" The hurt in Lily's voice was palpable, the kind of wounded innocence that had always made Maya backtrack and apologize. "After everything I've done for you, everything I've sacrificed?" "What have you sacrificed?" Maya's voice was louder than she had intended, drawing curious glances from nearby coworkers. "I gave up my apartment to move in with you after Mom and Dad died. I could have moved anywhere, done anything, but I stayed to help you deal with the house and the grief and all of it. I've been supporting you emotionally for 3 years, Maya. I've been your family when you had no one else." David was writing something on a piece of paper. He slid it across Maya's desk. "She moved in because she couldn't afford her own apartment. You've been supporting her." Maya stared at the note, feeling something shift inside her chest. "You moved in because you couldn't make rent on your own apartment. I've been paying your expenses for 3 years. I can't believe you're throwing money in my face right now, when you're hurt and confused and clearly not thinking straight. Maya, I love you. You're my sister, my family. Why are you trying to hurt me like this?" And there it was, the thing that had kept Maya trapped for so long, the way Lily could take any confrontation and turn it into evidence that Maya was the one causing harm, the one being cruel and unreasonable, the way she could weaponize love itself, use Maya's own caring nature against her. "I have to go. I'm at work." "Maya, wait, don't hang up angry. You know I can't handle it when you're angry with me. It makes me sick with worry. Please, just come home so we can talk this through properly." Maya looked at David, saw him shake his head firmly. "I'll call you later," she said, and hung up. The silence in her cubicle felt enormous. Around them, the normal office sounds continued. Keyboards clicking, phones ringing, the distant hum of the copy machine. But Maya felt like she just stepped off a cliff and was still falling through space, waiting to hit bottom. "Jesus Christ," David said softly. "Maya, that was masterful manipulation. I've never heard anyone twist reality that skillfully outside of a political campaign." "She's not trying to manipulate me. She's just—" Maya stopped, unable to finish the sentence. "Just what? Just scared? Just hurt?
Just protecting herself the only way she knew how? Maya, listen to me. I recorded that conversation on my phone. I want you to listen to it again later when you're not in the middle of it. I want you to hear what I just heard. Someone taking your legitimate concerns and making them sound like mental illness. Someone using your love for them as a weapon against you. Maya's hands were shaking. I don't know what's real anymore. That's exactly what emotional abuse does. It makes you doubt your own perception, your own memory, your own sanity. It's called gaslighting, and your sister is exceptionally good at it. Before Maya could respond, her email chimed with a new message. From Lily, sent to Maya's work address. Maya, I'm really concerned about your behavior today. I've made an appointment for you with Dr. Wilson, Mom's old doctor, for this afternoon. I think you might have a concussion or some other head injury from last night. Please don't be angry with me for caring about you. I also called Aunt Helen in Portland to let her know what happened. She's very worried and thinks you should come stay with her for a while until you're feeling more like yourself. Love you, Al. Maya stared at the screen, her chest constricting. Dr. Wilson was their family physician, someone who'd known them since childhood and who still saw Lily as the sweet, fragile younger sister who needed protection. If Lily told him Maya was acting irrationally, having memory problems, possibly suffering from a head injury, she's building a case, David said, reading over Maya's shoulder, making you look unstable so that if you tried to tell people what really happened, they'll think you're confused or delusional. Aunt Helen, Maya whispered. Their mother's sister was a well-meaning woman who'd always favored Lily, who had often commented that Maya was too serious and needed to let loose a little more. If Lily called her with concerns about Maya's mental state, Maya's phone rang again. This time the caller ID showed their Aunt Helen's number. Don't answer it, David advised. Not until you've had time to think about how you want to handle this. But Maya found herself reaching for the phone anyway, some deep-seated conditioning making it impossible to ignore family calling. Hello? Maya, sweetheart, Lily just called me and I'm so worried about you. She said you were acting strangely after your accident, that you slept in your car instead of coming inside. Honey, that doesn't sound like you at all. Lily's worried you might have hit your head, and frankly, so am I. You know, your mother used to get concussions when she was younger, fell off her horse twice in high school. The doctor said head injuries could cause personality changes, memory problems. Maya could hear Lily's narrative taking root, spreading through their family network like
virus. By the end of the day, everyone who mattered to Maya would believe she was having some kind of breakdown, that her accusations against Lily were the result of confusion or brain injury. Aunt Helen, I wasn't in a car accident. Lily pushed me and I hit the kitchen counter. I have 3 broken ribs and evidence of old injuries that suggest this has been happening for a while. Silence. Then, carefully, Maya, sweetheart, that doesn't sound right. Lily would never hurt you deliberately. She loves you more than anything. You two have always been so close, especially since your parents died. Maybe you're remembering the incident differently because of the trauma. There it was, the assumption that Maya must be mistaken, that sweet, vulnerable Lily couldn't possibly be capable of violence. The same assumption Maya herself had been making for years. I have to go, Maya said. I'm at work. Maya, wait. I think you should come stay with me for a while, just until you're feeling better. I could drive down this weekend. Maya hung up and immediately turned off her phone. The office around her felt like it was tilting, like the fluorescent lights were too bright and the walls were closing in. Every person in her life was being recruited into Lily's version of events, and Maya was powerless to stop it. Hey, David's voice was gentle. Breathe. You're having a panic attack. Maya realized he was right. Her breathing was shallow and fast, her hands were trembling, and there was a rushing sound in her ears, like standing too close to the ocean. David grabbed a paper bag from someone's lunch and handed it to her. Breathe into this. Slow, deep breaths. In for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4. Gradually, the world stopped spinning. Maya's breathing slowed, and the crushing weight on her chest eased slightly. But the fundamental problem remained. Lily was systematically undermining her credibility with everyone who might believe Maya's version of events. "This is what they do," David said quietly. "Abusers, I mean. They isolate their victims by controlling the narrative, making everyone think the victim is the unstable one. My ex-wife did the same thing, told our mutual friends I was having anger management issues, that I was paranoid and jealous. By the time I finally left, half our social circle thought I was the problem. What did you do? I documented everything, recorded conversations, saved text messages, took pictures of injuries. I built my own case file so that when I was ready to leave, I had evidence that contradicted her stories." Maya thought about the x-rays from last night, the medical record that proved her injuries were real and substantial. That was evidence, wasn't it? Something objective that couldn't be twisted or reinterpreted. "I have to go," Maya said. "I'm at work." "Good. But Maya, you need to be careful. If Lily realizes you're building a case against her, she might escalate. Abuse often gets worse when the victim starts fighting back." As if summoned by his words, Maya's computer chimed with another email. This one wasn't from Lily, it was from their shared bank account, an automatic notification about a large withdrawal. Maya clicked on it and felt her stomach drop. Lily had withdrawn $1,500 that morning, nearly emptying our checking account. "She's taking the money," Maya whispered, showing David the screen. "Of course she is. She's scared, and scared people do desperate things. You need to protect your finances immediately."
Maya called the bank from her desk phone, was transferred twice, and finally reached someone who could help her. "I need to remove someone from my checking account," she said. "My sister. She's been making unauthorized withdrawals." "I'm sorry, ma'am, but if she is listed as a joint account holder, technically any withdrawal she makes is authorized. You need to close the account and open a new one in your name only." "How long would that take?" "If you can come in today with proper identification, we can have it done within an hour. But I should warn you, if there are any automatic payments or direct deposits associated with the account, you'll need to update those separately." Maya's paycheck was direct deposited to that account. So was the automatic mortgage payment and the utilities and her car payment. Closing it would mean restructuring her entire financial life, but leaving it open meant giving Lily continued access to Maya's money. "I'll be there this afternoon," Maya said. David was nodding approvingly. "Good. What else? What other ways does she have control over your life?" Maya mentally inventoried the ways their lives were intertwined. The house was in both of their names, but Maya had been making all the payments. The car Maya drove was registered to both of them, though, again, Maya made the payments. The utilities were in Maya's name, but connected to the house they shared. The insurance policies... "Oh, God," Maya said, realization hitting her like a physical blow. "She's the beneficiary on my life insurance policy." David's expression darkened. "How much?" $200,000. "It's through work, but I had to designate a beneficiary when I started. She's my only family, so..." "Maya, you need to change that immediately. Today." "But that's crazy, right? She wouldn't... I mean, life insurance is for if something happens accidentally." "Maya, you've been in the hospital twice in the past year for accidents that were actually your sister hurting you. Last night, she put you in the emergency room with 3 broken ribs. What makes you think the next accident won't be worse?" The question hung in the air like smoke, acrid and cowking. Maya had never considered that Lily might deliberately try to seriously harm her, had never imagined that the escalating pattern of violence might lead somewhere truly dangerous. But looking at the financial evidence, thinking about the systematic way Lily was undermining her credibility, "I need to get out of that house." Yes, you do. But carefully. The most dangerous time for abuse victims is when they're leaving. That's when abusers realize they're losing control, and that's when they're most likely to do something desperate. Maya's head was spinning with the enormity of what lay ahead. Change banks, change insurance beneficiaries, find somewhere safe to live, document everything, protect herself legally and financially and physically. A week ago, her biggest worry was whether to splurge on organic groceries. Now she was planning an escape from her own life. "I can't do this alone."
You don't have to. There are people trained to help with exactly this situation. Remember that social worker from last night? Call her. And Maya, don't go home tonight. Don't go back there until you have a plan and backup. Maya nodded, though the thought of not going home felt impossibly strange. That house had been her sanctuary for 3 years, the place she'd poured her heart and savings into creating something beautiful and stable. Leaving it felt like admitting defeat, like letting Lily win. But staying might mean something worse than defeat. Staying might mean not surviving to fight another day.
Maya picked up her phone to call Jennifer Torres, the social worker from St. Mary's Hospital. As she dialed, she caught sight of her reflection in her computer monitor, pale, bruised, eyes wide with fear and determination in equal measure. She looked like someone whose life was about to change forever. For the first time in years, that felt like something to hope for rather than fear. Jennifer Torres answered on the second ring, her voice carrying the same calm professionalism Maya remembered from the hospital. "Maya? I'm so glad you called. How are you feeling today?" "Scared," Maya said honestly, "and confused. Everything feels like it's falling apart." That's completely normal when you start seeing an abusive situation clearly. It's like someone turned on all the lights in a house you thought you knew, and suddenly you're seeing rooms and shadows you never noticed before. Maya was sitting in her car in the hospital parking lot, having left work early under the pretense of a medical follow-up appointment. In reality, she'd needed to get away from the increasingly frantic calls and messages from Lily, and she'd needed to speak with someone who understood what was happening to her. "She's telling everyone I'm having a breakdown. She's made appointments with doctors, called my family, withdrawn money from our account. I feel like I'm going crazy." You're not going crazy. What you're describing is a common response when abuse victims start to resist or seek help. The abuser escalates their control tactics, often including attempts to make the victim appear unstable or unreliable. Jennifer had suggested they meet at a coffee shop near the hospital rather than in her office, somewhere public and neutral where Maya might feel more comfortable talking. The place was called Mockingbird Cafe, and it had the kind of worn-in coziness that came from years of serving as a refuge for medical staff between shifts and a gathering place for the neighborhood's elderly residents. Maya found Jennifer at a corner table, nursing a large coffee and reviewing what looked like case files. She was younger than Maya had remembered, maybe early 30s, with shoulder-length brown hair and the kind of face that inspired confidence, open and intelligent without being intimidating. "Before we talk about next steps," Jennifer said as Maya sat down, "I want you to know that everything you've done since last night has been exactly right. Removing yourself from the situation, reaching out for help, protecting your finances, those are all signs that you're thinking clearly and prioritizing your safety." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. She hadn't realized how much she'd needed to hear that, how much Lily's gaslighting had made her doubt her own judgment. "It doesn't feel right. It feels like I'm abandoning my sister, betraying my family." "That's the hardest part of escaping family abuse," Jennifer said gently. "When a stranger hurts us, we know to get away. When family hurts us, we're conditioned to forgive, to make excuses, to prioritize the relationship over our own safety. But Maya, loyalty shouldn't require you to accept being hurt." Jennifer pulled out a legal pad and a pen. "I want to walk through some things with you, build a timeline of incidents, and help you see the pattern more clearly. Sometimes putting it all down on paper helps victims understand that what they experienced was real and serious." For the next hour, Maya found herself recounting years of accidents and misunderstandings that took on a different meaning when viewed through the lens of escalating abuse. The time Lily had playfully tackled her at a family barbecue, sending Maya sprawling into a brick planter. The morning Lily had grabbed Maya's shoulders during an argument, her fingers pressing so hard they left bruises that lasted for weeks. The countless times Lily had borrowed money without asking, had broken Maya's belongings and never offered to replace them, had made Maya feel guilty for wanting basic respect and consideration.
You mentioned that this started after your parents died, Jennifer noted. That's not uncommon. Major life changes, especially traumatic ones, can trigger or escalate abusive behavior. Your sister lost her parents and her primary support system. You became the target for all her grief and anger and fear. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. But she was grieving too, Maya protested. We both were. I should have been more understanding. Maya, stop. Jennifer's voice was firm but kind. Grief doesn't excuse abuse. Millions of people experience terrible losses without becoming violent toward their loved ones. Your sister made choices about how to handle her pain, and those choices included hurting you. That's not your fault, and it's not your responsibility to fix. Maya stared down at the timeline they'd created, pages of incidents stretching back 3 years. Seeing it all laid out like that in black and white made it impossible to deny the pattern. This wasn't a series of isolated incidents or misunderstandings. This was systematic, escalating abuse. What do I do now? Maya asked. Jennifer pulled out a manila folder and spread several pamphlets and papers across the table. You have options. The first thing is ensuring your immediate safety. Do you have somewhere you can stay tonight? Somewhere your sister doesn't have access to? Maya thought about it. Most of her friends were also Lily's friends, people who knew them as a package deal and who would ask too many questions if Maya suddenly showed up needing a place to stay. Her family was already being recruited into Lily's narrative about Maya's mental state. David from work had offered his guest room, but Maya barely knew him outside the office. There's a women's shelter about 20 minutes from here. It's specifically for domestic violence victims, and they have counselors on staff who understand exactly what you're going through. You can stay there while you figure out longer-term housing. The word shelter made Maya flinch. Shelters were for other people, weren't they? People who didn't have college degrees and steady jobs and houses in nice neighborhoods. People whose situations were obviously undeniably bad. I know what you're thinking. I see that look on almost every client's face when I mention shelter. But Maya, domestic violence doesn't discriminate based on education or income or social status. The women at Cedar House come from all walks of life. Teachers, lawyers, nurses, executives. What they have in common isn't socioeconomic status. It's that they've all been hurt by someone they trusted. Maya nodded reluctantly. How long can someone stay there? Up to 90 days while they work on finding permanent housing and rebuilding their independence. They also have legal advocates who can help with restraining orders, housing applications, insurance changes, all the practical stuff that feels overwhelming when you're trying to escape an abusive situation. Restraining order? The phrase sounded so official, so serious. But she's my sister. She lives in my house. Maya, that's exactly why you might need one. Right now, Lily has legal access to your home, your finances, your personal space. A restraining order would require her to move out and stay away from you. It would also create a legal record of the abuse, which could be important if she escalates her behavior. Jennifer pulled out her phone and showed Maya a text message from her sister about an hour ago. She got my number from the hospital directory.
The message read, I'm very concerned about my sister, Maya Chen. She was in an accident last night and seems to be having memory problems and paranoid thoughts. I think someone at your hospital is filling her head with ideas about our family. Please call me so we can discuss getting her proper psychiatric help. Maya stared at the message, feeling sick. She's trying to discredit me with you too. Of course she is. It's a classic move. Abusers often try to manipulate the support systems their victims reach out to. But Maya, I deal with this every day. I know the difference between someone having a mental health crisis and someone escaping abuse. Your story is consistent, your injuries are documented, and your responses are completely appropriate for someone in your situation. Relief flooded through Maya so powerfully that she started crying right there in the coffee shop. For days, she'd been questioning her own perceptions, wondering if maybe Lily was right and she was confused or paranoid or having some kind of breakdown. Having a professional validate her experience felt like being handed a lifeline.
There's something else, Jennifer said gently. The police report from last night. Maya looked up, confused. What police report? No one called the police. Actually, someone did. Your neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. She heard shouting and what sounded like something heavy falling, and she called 911. The officers arrived just as the ambulance was taking you to the hospital, but they filed a report based on their observations and the EMT's account of your injuries. Jennifer pulled out a copy of the police report and slid it across the table. Maya read it with growing amazement. The officers had noted signs of possible domestic disturbance, including victim appeared fearful of family member present and injuries inconsistent with explanation provided. They'd also noted that Lily had been agitated and attempting to control narrative of events. They saw it, Maya whispered. Even when I was making excuses and trying to protect her, they saw what was really happening. Trained professionals usually do. And Maya, this report strengthens your case significantly if you decide to pursue legal protection. You have medical documentation, professional observations, and now police documentation. That's a very strong foundation. Maya felt something shifting inside her chest, like a door that had been locked for years suddenly swinging open. For so long, she'd felt like she was the only one who could see the dysfunction in her relationship with Lily, like she was trapped in a reality that everyone else dismissed or misunderstood. But the evidence was all there: medical, legal, professional. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't overreacting. She was a victim of abuse, and there were people trained to help her escape. I want to go to the shelter. Tonight. I don't want to go back to that house. Jennifer smiled, the first truly warm smile Maya had seen since this nightmare began. I'll call them right now and let them know you're coming. But first, we need to make sure you have everything you need. Do you have identification, medication, any essential items you can't do without? Maya inventoried what she had with her. Her purse contained her driver's license, credit cards, some cash, and her prescription pain medication from last night. Her work laptop was in her car, along with a change of clothes she kept for emergencies. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start over. What about my things at the house? My clothes, my photos, Maya's voice trailed off as she realized how little of it actually mattered. The photo albums could be replaced. The clothes could be replaced. Her safety couldn't be. Once you're settled at Cedar House, we can arrange for a police escort to collect your belongings. You don't have to see your sister or negotiate with her. Officers will supervise while you pack what you need. Maya nodded, then thought of something else. My job. I can't just disappear from work without explanation. Actually, you can. Federal law requires employers to provide leave for employees dealing with domestic violence situations. Your job is protected, and your employer has to keep your new address confidential if you request it. Every obstacle Maya could think of, Jennifer had an answer for. Every fear or concern was met with practical solutions and legal protections Maya didn't know existed. It was like
discovering that she'd been lost in a maze for years, and suddenly someone was showing her the exit signs that had been there all along. Jennifer, Maya said, as they prepared to leave the coffee shop, why are you doing this? I mean, I know it's your job, but you're going above and beyond. You barely know me. Jennifer gathered her papers and smiled sadly. Because I was where you were 8 years ago. Different circumstances. It was my ex-husband, not a family member, but the same cycle of abuse and isolation and self-doubt. A social worker named Patricia helped me escape, and she probably saved my life. This is how I pay it forward. As they walked toward their cars, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not the desperate, clinging hope that maybe things would get better if she just tried harder, or loved more, or made herself smaller. Real hope, grounded in concrete actions and legal protections and professional support. For the first time since Lily had pushed her into that kitchen counter, Maya believed she was going to be okay. Her phone buzzed with another text from Lily. Maya, I'm really scared. You haven't been home in 2 days and people are asking questions. Can you please just call me so I know you're safe? Maya showed the message to Jennifer, who shook her head. Classic. Making herself the victim and making you responsible for managing her emotions. Don't respond.
Maya deleted the message without reading it again. Then, on impulse, she blocked Lily's number entirely. The silence that followed felt like freedom. Cedar House Domestic Violence Shelter sat on a quiet residential street behind a small medical complex, its location deliberately unmarked and discreet. From the outside, it looked like any other converted Victorian home, painted yellow with white trim, surrounded by flower gardens that someone clearly tended with love and attention. Only the reinforced windows and subtle security cameras hinted at its true purpose. Maya sat in her car outside the building for nearly 10 minutes before working up the courage to go inside. Even after everything Jennifer had told her, even with the evidence folder thick with documentation of Lily's abuse, part of her still felt like she was overreacting, like she didn't deserve to be here among women whose situations were really serious. The woman who answered the door was about Maya's age, with short auburn hair and the kind of genuine smile that reached her eyes. She wore jeans and a sweater that looked like something Maya might pick out for herself, which was somehow reassuring. "You must be Maya. I'm Sarah, the overnight counselor. Jennifer told me you'd be coming by tonight." The interior of Cedar House was nothing like what Maya had imagined. She'd pictured institutional furniture and harsh lighting, something that looked like a hospital or government building. Instead, the living room was decorated with comfortable couches, warm lighting, and artwork that spoke of hope and healing. Children's toys were scattered in one corner, and the kitchen beyond smelled like someone was baking bread. "How many women stay here?" Maya asked as Sarah led her through a brief tour. "We have space for 12 women and their children. Right now we're housing 8 women and 5 kids, ranging from the ages of 2 to 15. Sarah opened the door to a small but cozy bedroom. "This would be your room. It's private, and you can lock it from the inside." Many women find that sense of security important in the early days. Maya set her small overnight bag on the single bed and looked around. A window faced the backyard where she could see a small playground and vegetable garden. Someone had left a welcome basket on the dresser. Toiletries, snacks, a journal, and a small stuffed bear with a note attached. "You are brave, you are believed, you are not alone." "Who left this?" Maya asked, touching the bear's soft fur.
Another resident. Women here often leave small gifts for newcomers because they remember how scary it was to walk through those doors for the first time. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. In the space of 48 hours, she'd gone from feeling completely isolated to being surrounded by people who understood exactly what she was going through. It was overwhelming and comforting in equal measure. "What happens now?" Maya asked. "Now, you rest. Tomorrow, if you're ready, you'll meet with our legal advocate to discuss your options. You'll also meet with a counselor who specializes in family abuse. It's a bit different from partner abuse, and we want to make sure you get the specific support you need." That night, Maya lay in the narrow bed listening to the sounds of other women moving through their own processes of healing and rebuilding. Someone was on the phone in the common room, talking to what sounded like a lawyer about custody arrangements. Another woman was helping her child with homework at the kitchen table, their voices carrying the familiar rhythms of ordinary family life. For the first time in months, Maya slept through the night without jumping awake at every sound, without that constant low-level anxiety about what Lily's mood might be when she woke. She was awakened by the smell of coffee and voices in the hallway. Women were getting ready for work, making lunches for their children, engaging in the daily routines of life that continued even in the midst of crisis. Maya had expected the shelter to feel like a place where time stood still, where women hid from the world until they could figure out how to rejoin it. Instead, it felt like a launching pad, a place where women gathered strength before stepping back into their lives on their own terms. "Good morning," said a voice from the doorway. Maya turned to see a woman about 40, dressed in scrubs and eating toast. "I'm Janet. I work at the hospital downtown. Jennifer said you might be the one she brought in yesterday." "Yes, I'm Maya." "I wanted to thank you," Janet said, sitting on the edge of Maya's bed. "For coming forward, I mean. My sister's been in an abusive relationship with her boyfriend for 2 years, and I've been trying to convince her to get help. When I told her about you last night, about someone who escaped family abuse, she finally agreed to talk to a counselor." Maya stared at her. "I haven't done anything yet. I'm still figuring out what comes next." "You left," Janet said simply.
You recognized that what was happening to you was wrong, and you got yourself to safety. That's everything. That's the hardest part. After Janet left for work, Maya met with Cedar House's legal advocate, a woman named Rebecca Martinez, who had the kind of sharp intelligence that made Maya feel instantly confident in her abilities. Rebecca had already reviewed the police report and medical records Jennifer had shared, and she had a clear plan of action. We're going to file for a protective order this morning. Given the documented injuries and the pattern of escalating behavior, I'm confident we'll get it approved. That will require your sister to move out of the house and stay at least 500 feet away from you at all times. What if she doesn't comply? Then she gets arrested. Maya, the courts take protective orders very seriously, especially when there's documentation from police and medical experts. Your sister will be served with papers that make it clear this isn't just a suggestion, it's a legal requirement. They spent the morning at the courthouse filling out paperwork and meeting with a judge who reviewed Maya's case with careful attention. The protective order was granted that same day, and by afternoon, police officers were serving Lily with papers that required her to vacate the house within 24 hours. Maya wasn't there to see it happen, but Rebecca got a call from the supervising officer. Your sister was dramatic, lots of crying, claims that you're having a breakdown and that this is all a misunderstanding, but she's been officially notified and she has until tomorrow evening to remove her belongings.
That evening, Maya sat in the Cedar House common room with 3 other women, sharing pizza and watching the news. It felt surreal, this ordinary moment of communal dinner while her entire life was being restructured behind the scenes. But it also felt hopeful, like she was glimpsing what normal life might look like when it wasn't constantly shaped by someone else's volatile emotions. "How long did it take you to feel safe?" Maya asked Linda, a woman who'd been at Cedar House for 6 weeks and was preparing to move into her own apartment. "Safe?" Linda considered the question. "Physically safe, maybe 2 weeks after I got the restraining order and knew he couldn't just show up wherever I was. Emotionally safe, that's still a work in progress. But Maya, every day gets a little easier. Every day you realize that you can trust your own judgment, that you don't have to walk on eggshells, that you can make decisions based on what you want instead of what will keep someone else calm." The next morning, Rebecca called with an update. "The police supervised your sister's move yesterday. She's removed her belongings and turned over her keys. She also left you a letter, which the officers reviewed to make sure it didn't contain threats. It's what you'd expect. Lots of emotional manipulation, claims that you're destroying the family, promises to change if you'll just give her another chance." "I don't want to read it," Maya said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "Good. You don't have to. You don't owe her your attention or your emotional energy, not after what she's put you through." That afternoon, Maya returned to her house for the first time in 4 days. She'd expected it to feel different somehow, but it looked exactly the same. The morning glory vines still blooming on the porch, the herb garden still thriving in its window boxes, the rooms still decorated with the care and attention she'd poured into making it a home. The only difference was the absence of tension, the missing undercurrent of anxiety that had become so constant Maya had stopped noticing it until it was gone. She walked through the room slowly, reacquainting herself with her own space, marveling at how much larger everything seemed when she didn't have to worry about someone else's unpredictable reactions to her presence. Jennifer stopped by that evening to check on her. "How does it feel to be home?" "Quiet, peaceful. I'd forgotten what that felt like." "It takes some getting used to," Jennifer acknowledged. "Many women report feeling anxious about the silence at first, like they're waiting for the other shoe to drop. That hypervigilance is a normal response to living with chronic stress." Maya nodded. She had felt that, kept listening for Lily's key in the lock, for the sound of footsteps that meant she needed to gauge someone's mood and adjust her own behavior accordingly. "There's something else we need to discuss," Jennifer said. "Lily's been calling family members, friends, your workplace. She's telling people you've had some kind of breakdown, that you're being manipulated by radical feminists who are turning you against your family."
Maya sighed. She's not going to stop, is she? Probably not immediately, but Maya, you don't owe anyone an explanation of your private life. The people who matter will believe you when you're ready to tell them your story. The people who don't believe you, well, that tells you something important about who they really are. Over the following weeks, Maya watched as her social circle sorted itself into categories. David from work not only believed her completely, but offered to be a character witness if she needed one. Her friend Emma, who'd known both sisters since college, initially seemed shocked and skeptical, but came around after Maya showed her the medical records and police report.
Aunt Helen, on the other hand, remained convinced that Maya was having some kind of crisis and needed to forgive and forget for the sake of family harmony. Some of Maya's college friends seemed to simply disappear, apparently uncomfortable with the messy reality of domestic violence and preferring to avoid the situation entirely. This is normal too, the counselor at Cedar House explained during one of their sessions. Abuse often reveals who your real support system is. Some people can't handle the complexity of the situation, or they've been manipulated by your abuser, or they just don't understand how serious domestic violence really is. Maya found herself caring less about other people's opinions than she'd expected. For years, she'd been so focused on managing everyone else's feelings and maintaining relationships that she'd forgotten what it felt like to prioritize her own well-being. Now, surrounded by genuine support from professionals and other survivors, the approval of people who couldn't see her truth felt less important. 3 months after getting the protective order, Maya received a letter from Lily's attorney. Lily was requesting that the order be modified to allow supervised family contact because she was, quote, in therapy and making significant progress addressing her anger management issues. Maya read the letter twice, then called Rebecca. "What do you think?" Rebecca asked. "I think therapy is good for her, and I hope she gets the help she needs," Maya said. "But I also think I don't owe her access to my life just because she's decided to work on herself. I'm finally safe and peaceful and starting to remember who I am when I'm not managing someone else's emotions. I don't want to give that up." "Then we'll oppose the modification," Rebecca said simply. "The court doesn't require you to maintain contact with someone who's abused you, even if they're getting treatment." The hearing was brief. Lily's attorney argued that family relationships were important and that Lily had learned healthy coping strategies in therapy. Rebecca countered with the medical records, the pattern of escalating violence, and Maya's right to live free from fear. The judge denied the modification request. The protective order will remain in full effect. Miss Chen has a right to safety and peace, and I see no compelling reason to compromise that for the convenience of family reconciliation. Maya felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. The legal system, which she'd feared might side with Lily's claims of rehabilitation and family importance, had instead prioritized Maya's safety and autonomy. It was a validation she hadn't known she needed. 6 months after that night in the emergency room, Maya made a decision that surprised even herself. She applied to return to graduate school to finish her master's degree in education. The teaching dreams she had abandoned when their parents died suddenly felt possible again, now that she wasn't constantly managing someone else's crisis or walking on eggshells to keep the peace. "I want to work with at-risk teenagers, kids who come from complicated family situations, who might be dealing with abuse or neglect at home. I want to be the adult who sees them clearly and believes them when they finally get brave enough to ask for help." Jennifer smiled. "That makes perfect sense. Survivors often become the best advocates because they understand the dynamics from the inside." Maya had worried that her own trauma might make her too emotional or reactive to help others effectively, but her counselor at Cedar House had helped her see it differently. Your experiences don't disqualify you from helping others. They make you uniquely qualified to recognize the signs and respond appropriately. You'll be able to see things that other teachers might miss. The graduate program was part-time, designed for working professionals, which meant Maya could keep her job at the medical supply company while taking evening and weekend classes. Her first education course was Recognizing and Responding to Student Trauma. And as Maya sat in the classroom listening to lectures about the signs of abuse and neglect, she found herself thinking about her own teenage years with new clarity. How many times had teachers seen her bruises and accepted her explanations about being clumsy? How many times had they noticed her anxiety, her perfectionism, her desperate need to please, and simply labeled her a good student without looking deeper? Maya began to understand that her own experiences hadn't started in adulthood. The pattern of abuse and excuses and family loyalty over personal safety had roots that went back much further than she'd realized. Lily was already hurting me when we were kids, Maya told her counselor during one session. I just didn't have words for it then, and everyone called it sibling rivalry or said she was just spirited and I needed to be more understanding. That's very common, her counselor replied. Abusive patterns often start in childhood and evolve as the participants grow older. What you experienced as an adult was likely an escalation of dynamics that had been in place for years. This realization was both heartbreaking and liberating. Heartbreaking because it meant Maya had been trapped in this cycle much longer than she'd understood. Liberating because it explained why leaving had felt so difficult and unnatural. She'd been conditioned from childhood to accept Lily's treatment as normal family behavior. Maya threw herself into her studies with the passion she'd forgotten she possessed. She learned about trauma-informed teaching, about creating classroom environments where vulnerable students could feel safe enough to focus on learning instead of survival. She studied child development, educational psychology, and special needs accommodation. For the first time in years, Maya felt intellectually engaged and excited about her future. Her professors noticed her dedication and insight. Dr. Rachel Kumar, who taught the trauma recognition course, asked Maya to stay after class one evening. "Your contributions to our discussions have been exceptional," Dr. Kumar said. "You have an intuitive understanding of how trauma affects learning that typically takes years to develop. Have you considered specializing in trauma-informed education?" Maya felt a flutter of pride and possibility. "I'd love to learn more about that." "There's a specialized certification program offered through the state university. It's intensive, requires a summer residency and a year-long practicum, but graduates are highly sought after by school districts dealing with high trauma populations." That night, Maya sat in her quiet house, her house, finally and completely hers, researching the certification program. The curriculum covered everything from neuroscience research on trauma's impact on brain development to practical strategies for creating healing-centered classrooms. It was exactly what she wanted to do with her life, exactly the kind of work that would transform her own painful experiences into something that could help others. But the program was expensive, and it would require taking a leave of absence from her current job. Maya found herself doing financial calculations, trying to figure out how to make it work, when she realized something that made her laugh out loud. She was planning her life based on what she wanted, not what she could afford or what would keep someone else comfortable. It was such a foreign concept that it felt revolutionary. Maya called the financial aid office the next morning and learned about grants specifically available for students pursuing trauma-informed education credentials. She applied for 3 different programs and was awarded enough funding to cover most of her expenses. "I'm going to do it," she told David over lunch at their usual spot near the office. "I'm going to quit my job and go back to school full-time." David grinned. "It's about damn time. You've been talking about teaching since I've known you. I was wondering when you'd stop making excuses and actually do it." "I wasn't making excuses," Maya protested, then stopped. "Okay, maybe I was, but they felt like real obstacles at the time."
They were real obstacles. You were supporting another adult and dealing with constant crisis and trauma. Now you're free to make decisions based on your own dreams instead of someone else's needs. As Maya prepared to leave her job and start the certification program, she found herself thinking about ripple effects. Her decision to escape Lily's abuse had started with that night in the emergency room, but it was creating changes that extended far beyond her personal safety. She was going to become a teacher who could recognize and respond to abuse. She would work with students who needed someone to believe them and help them find resources. Some of those students would grow up to become advocates or counselors, or simply adults who knew how to seek help when they needed it.
The week before Maya started the summer residency program, she received an unexpected phone call from her cousin Rachel, Lily's age, and someone Maya hadn't spoken to since the protective order was granted. Maya, I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I got your number from Aunt Helen, and I need to tell you something. Rachel's voice was shaky, uncertain. Maya braced herself for another family member who'd been recruited into Lily's narrative about Maya's breakdown and betrayal. After everything happened with you and Lily, I started thinking about my own relationship with her. And Maya, I realized she's been doing some of the same things to me. The borrowing money and never paying it back, the emotional manipulation, the way she makes me feel crazy when I try to set boundaries. Maya felt her heart race. Rachel, are you okay? Has she hurt you physically? Not like what she did to you, but there have been incidents, times when she grabbed me too hard or pushed me when she was angry. I always thought it was just her being dramatic, but after hearing about your x-rays and everything... Rachel, do you want to talk to someone? I can give you the number for a counselor who specializes in family abuse. Would you? I mean, I know she's getting therapy and everything, but I don't think that means she's safe to be around. And everyone in the family keeps saying we need to forgive her and move on, but I don't feel ready to do that. Maya gave Rachel Jennifer Torres' contact information and encouraged her to trust her own instincts about her safety. After they hung up, Maya realized that her decision to speak openly about Lily's abuse had given Rachel permission to name her own experiences and seek help. This was what healing looked like, Maya understood now. Not just healing from your own trauma, but creating space for others to heal from theirs. Not just escaping abuse, but making it a little easier for the next person to recognize and escape it too. On the first day of the certification program, Maya sat in a circle with 23 other educators, social workers, and advocates, all committed to learning how to better serve trauma survivors. As they went around the circle sharing their motivations for being there, Maya listened to stories of professional calling, academic interest, and personal healing. When it was her turn, Maya spoke clearly without shame. I'm here because I'm a survivor of family abuse, and I want to become the kind of teacher who can recognize when a student is going through what I went through. I want to be someone who believes kids when they tell me something's wrong at home, and who knows how to help them find safety and support. The professor leading the orientation, Dr. Maria Santos, nodded appreciatively. Lived experience combined with professional training creates some of our most effective advocates. You bring a perspective to this work that can't be learned from textbooks alone. For the first time since that night in the emergency room, Maya felt fully proud of her journey. Not just proud of surviving, but proud of the person she was becoming because of what she'd survived. She was going to help kids who were trapped in the same cycle she'd escaped. She was going to create the kind of classroom where students felt safe enough to learn and grow and dream about their futures. As the summer program progressed, Maya found herself forming deep friendships with her cohort members. These were people who understood that trauma wasn't something to be ashamed of or hidden, but something to be acknowledged and healed from and transformed into wisdom that could help others.
2 years later, Maya stood at the front of her 7th grade English classroom at Roosevelt Middle School, watching 28 students file in for first period. The walls were covered with inspirational quotes, student artwork, and a carefully curated selection of books that reflected diverse experiences and perspectives. In the corner, she'd created a calm space with soft cushions and fidget tools for students who needed a moment to regulate their emotions. Roosevelt served a high-needs population: kids from low-income families, recent immigrants, students in foster care, and children dealing with various forms of trauma at home. It was exactly where Maya had wanted to work, and after completing her certification in trauma-informed education, she'd been recruited specifically for her expertise in recognizing and responding to student needs. "All right, scholars," Maya said as the bell rang. "Who can tell me what we learned about metaphors yesterday?" Hands shot up around the room. These students had been wary of her at the beginning of the year, another new teacher who probably wouldn't last long in their challenging school. But Maya had proven herself different.
She noticed when students were hungry and quietly made sure they had access to food. She recognized when behavior problems were actually trauma responses and responded with patience rather than punishment. She created assignments that allowed students to tell their own stories in safe, supported ways. "Miss Chen," said Jasmine, a quiet 8th grader who'd started staying after school to help organize the classroom library, "can we work on our personal narrative essays today? I have an idea for mine." Jasmine had been in Maya's class for only 3 months, but in that time, she'd transformed from a sullen, disengaged student to someone who actively participated in discussions and sought out extra challenges. Maya had noticed the signs, the way Jasmine flinched at sudden movements, her hypervigilance about adult emotions, her tendency to take responsibility for other people's problems. During a private conversation, Jasmine had revealed that her older brother often got angry, and that she spent most of her time at home trying to keep him calm and protect her younger siblings. Maya had connected Jasmine with the school social worker and helped her family access counseling services. The transformation in Jasmine's confidence and academic performance had been remarkable. "Absolutely," Maya said. "Remember, you can write about anything that shaped who you are. It doesn't have to be a dramatic story. Sometimes the most powerful narratives come from everyday moments that taught us something important." As her students worked on their essays, Maya circulated around the room offering encouragement and feedback. She paused at Marcus's desk, where the normally energetic 12-year-old was staring blankly at his paper. "What's up, Marcus? Writer's block?" Marcus looked up at her with tired eyes. "Ms. Chen, is it okay if my story is about something bad that happened? Like, really bad?" Maya's heart rate picked up slightly, the response she'd learned to recognize as her intuition telling her to pay close attention. "Marcus, you can write about whatever feels important to you, but if it's something that's still causing you pain or fear, maybe we should talk about it first. Would you like to chat during lunch?" Marcus nodded gratefully. Maya made a mental note to contact the school counselor and have resources ready for whatever Marcus might need to share. This was exactly why she had become a teacher, not just to help students with grammar and literature, but to be the adult who noticed when they were struggling and who knew how to connect them with help. Maya had become expert at reading the subtle signs of trauma, the way certain students shut down when voices were raised, the perfectionism that masked deep insecurity, the hypervigilance that made it difficult to focus on learning. After school, Maya attended a staff meeting about implementing new trauma-informed practices throughout the district. As the only teacher in her school with specialized certification, she'd been asked to lead professional development sessions for her colleagues.
The key thing to remember, Maya told the group of 20 teachers, is that trauma isn't just about major catastrophic events. It can be ongoing stress, family dysfunction, poverty, racism, or any experience that overwhelms a child's ability to cope. Our job isn't to be therapists, but to create classroom environments where all students feel safe enough to learn. Principal Williams, a woman in her 50s who'd been running urban schools for 2 decades, nodded approvingly. "Maya, the data speaks for itself. Since you started here, we've seen a 30% decrease in behavioral referrals and a significant improvement in reading scores among our highest-risk students. Whatever you're doing, we want to replicate it." Maya felt proud of those statistics, but she was more proud of the individual successes. Students like Jasmine, who'd found their voices. Kids like Marcus, who felt safe enough to share their struggles. Teenagers who were learning that their worth wasn't determined by their circumstances. 5 years later, Dr. Maya Chen, she'd completed her doctorate in educational psychology with a focus on trauma-informed practice, stood before an auditorium full of educators, social workers, and advocates at the National Conference on School-Based Trauma Response. Her keynote speech, "From Victim to Educator, Using Lived Experience to Transform Schools," had drawn an overflow crowd.
Trauma-informed education isn't just about identifying students who've been hurt. It's about understanding that healing happens in relationship, that learning happens when students feel safe, and that sometimes the most important thing we can teach a child is that they matter and that their story matters. In the audience, Maya could see Jennifer Torres, who'd traveled from across the country to hear her speak. Jennifer had become something like a mentor and friend over the years, someone who understood the long arc of healing and who celebrated each milestone in Maya's journey. After her speech, Maya was approached by dozens of conference attendees with questions about implementing trauma-informed practices in their own schools and communities. A superintendent from Oregon wanted to hire her to train his entire district. A professor from Columbia invited her to guest lecture in his graduate program. A documentary filmmaker asked if she'd be willing to share her story on camera to help educate the public about family abuse. But the conversation that meant the most came from a young teacher named Amy, who pulled Maya aside during the break. "Dr. Chen, I need to thank you. 3 years ago, I heard you speak at a smaller conference, and something you said made me recognize that my sister was abusing me. I got help, I got out, and now I'm working with at-risk students too. Your story gave me permission to tell my own story and get the help I needed." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. This was the ripple effect she dreamed of, not just healing from her own trauma, but creating space for others to heal from theirs. 7 years later, Maya's house on Maple Street had been transformed again, this time into something that felt truly like home, rather than a sanctuary from someone else's chaos. She'd painted the rooms in warm colors, filled them with books and plants and photographs of the students who touched her heart over the years. The morning glory vine still bloomed on the front porch, and the herb garden had expanded to include vegetables and flowers that attracted butterflies and bees. She was hosting a dinner party for her chosen family: David from her old job, who'd become one of her closest friends; Jennifer Torres, who visited several times a year; Dr. Kumar, her former professor, who'd become a colleague and collaborator; and 3 teachers from her current school who shared her passion for trauma-informed education. "To Maya," Jennifer said, raising her glass of wine, "who turned her pain into purpose and has helped more kids than she'll ever know."
To all of us, Maya replied, for creating the kind of community where people can heal and grow and become who they're meant to be. As her friends laughed and shared stories around her dining room table, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her here. 7 years ago, she'd been lying on an emergency room table with broken ribs, too afraid and conditioned to name what was happening to her as abuse. Now she was Dr. Maya Chen, a nationally recognized expert in trauma-informed education, someone who'd helped transform dozens of schools and hundreds of students' lives. But more than the professional accomplishments, Maya was proud of the person she'd become, someone who trusted her own judgment, who set boundaries without guilt, who chose relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Someone who'd learned that healing wasn't about forgetting the past, but about transforming it into wisdom that could help others. 10 years later, Maya sat in her office at the University of Education, where she'd recently been hired as an associate professor of trauma-informed pedagogy. At 38, she was one of the youngest faculty members to receive tenure, and her research on the long-term academic impacts of trauma-informed teaching practices was being cited by educators around the world. Her latest project was a longitudinal study following students who'd been in trauma-informed classrooms for multiple years, documenting not just their academic progress, but their social-emotional development and their ability to form healthy relationships as they moved into high school and beyond. This powerful story follows Dr. Maya Chen's extraordinary 20-year transformation from abuse survivor to renowned educator and advocate. The narrative begins when Maya, at 28, suffers broken ribs after her sister Lily pushes her into a kitchen counter. Initially dismissing it as an accident, Maya's world changes when an observant emergency room doctor, Dr. Patricia Reeves, recognizes the injury pattern as consistent with abuse.
With support from social worker Jennifer Torres, Maya begins the difficult journey of acknowledging that her sister has been physically and emotionally abusing her for years. She realizes that what she'd normalized as Lily's temper was actually systematic family violence that had been occurring since childhood, enabled by parents who prioritized keeping the peace over protecting Maya. The healing process is challenging but transformative. Maya moves out, cuts contact with Lily, attends therapy, and begins rebuilding her life. She discovers her passion for education and trauma-informed practice, eventually becoming a middle school teacher who specializes in recognizing and supporting students experiencing abuse. Her classroom becomes a sanctuary where struggling students find their voices. She develops innovative trauma-informed educational approaches that help children process their experiences through creative expression and storytelling. Her methods prove so effective that she returns to school for her doctorate, eventually becoming a university professor who trains other educators. Throughout her career, Maya receives calls and messages from former students whose lives she's touched. Jasmine Martinez, once a quiet girl protecting siblings from an abusive brother, becomes a social worker specializing in family therapy. Countless other students become teachers, counselors, and advocates, creating ripples of healing that extend far beyond Maya's direct influence. 15 years after her initial injury, Maya speaks at the same hospital where her journey began, now as Dr. Chen, addressing healthcare workers about domestic violence awareness. Her message emphasizes the importance of believing victims and implementing trauma-informed approaches in all helping professions.
The story culminates 20 years later with Maya, now 48, celebrating the publication of her book, Seeing the Invisible, a trauma-informed approach to education and healing. The book launch brings together the community she's built, former students, colleagues, mentors, and even her cousin Rachel, who found courage to leave her own abusive situation after witnessing Maya's journey. Maya has transformed the very house where her abuse occurred into a warm sanctuary where she hosts Sunday dinners for her chosen family. Her kitchen counter, once a site of violence, now serves as a place for nourishing others. She has learned that healing doesn't require her abuser's acknowledgement or apology. It comes from her own commitment to truth, safety, and growth. This story powerfully illustrates how personal trauma, when processed and integrated, can become a source of extraordinary strength and service to others. Maya's journey from victim to survivor to healer demonstrates the profound impact one person's courage can have in breaking cycles of abuse and creating positive change across generations. If this story of resilience, healing, and transformation resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more inspiring narratives about overcoming adversity and finding purpose through pain. Your subscription helps us continue sharing stories that matter.